Good evening and welcome to Under the Hood. We are back for season number 2. It is Monday, September 11th, an important day in our nation's history, and a moment of silence to remember everything that happened 16 years ago, and all the tragedy that occurred, and we vow to never forget. And with that, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Eli Karp, host of Under the Hood and editor-in-chief of Throw the Flag Sports. And today with me, we have a couple newcomers. We have Joe from Dallas, Matt from North Carolina, and of course, Spentano is back in his abyss in Vermont, and I'm right here in New York. So we have a lot to get to. Hopefully, we will get the crowd to file in soon. So here we go. Season 2. NFL started yesterday, week 1. Starting on Thursday. Nevertheless, a ton to talk about. A struggling week for quarterbacks. It was not pretty if you were a quarterback in the NFL. All right, Spentano, what did you see?
Yeah, unless your name was Alex Smith, you didn't really have a good week, and that was that was weird. That was out of nowhere. Well, actually, Stafford had a good week, but Alex Smith by far was the best quarterback. Brady looked not Brady-like at all. Even Dak, he had an all right game, but he looks pretty shaky at the beginning. Eli didn't have a good game.
Don't even.
Blake Bortles was utilized by not using him, and the Jaguars won, and he only threw 21 passes. I'm pretty sure that's how they need to win their games. And Tom Savage lasted he lasted a half. Just Carson Palmer was awful. Andy Dalton was terrible. It was just a horrible week for quarterbacks, and I'm not sure the causation, but it could be maybe not playing that much in the preseason. Yeah, it was not pretty.
No, it was not. Matt, what are your thoughts on offensive play? Anything from week 1?
Well, I thought it was one of the bright spots was obviously Matthew Stafford, who had 4 touchdowns and 292 yards against an actually really solid Cardinals defense. And I really think that the Lions were underrated coming into this season because they have no wide receiving. And I'm looking at their schedule, and it looks like they have the Giants coming up week 2. And I think that's going to be a breeze for the Lions. And then they have the Falcons at home. The Falcons, they really just don't have any defense right now. I mean, the Lions' defense is pretty poor, but I really think that Matthew Stafford is really campaigning for a possible MVP season coming up this year. So he's really been a bright spot.
Yeah, week 1, and it started so poorly for Detroit, and they go down 10-0 in the first quarter, a pick 6. Like one of Matthew Stafford's first throws, I think, in Arizona territory was this pick 6 that honestly any of the 4 of us could have caught and taken to the house. Mm-hmm. And Detroit just couldn't do anything. They had Jake Rudock, the ex-Michigan quarterback, who was holding this. He was putting down the snaps, and he muffed the extra point, and they couldn't even get an extra point in the first half. It was a very odd start for the Detroit Lions, but they came back, and they came back. Excuse me, but they came back roaring, the Lions did. Wow. And Arizona just really looked out of sorts. I picked Arizona. I thought they would be a team that would challenge for the West, and things just they looked like they did last year. They just couldn't put it together. They had the pieces, they really do, but they're old on offense, and frankly, David Johnson is now out for 12 weeks, so kiss goodbye to your fantasy season, David Johnson owners. And the Arizona Cardinals showed absolutely nothing yesterday that makes you believe that this is a team that's going to get it together, because sure, they had things going in the first quarter, first half. Carson Palmer was terrible. David Johnson is hurt, and when he wasn't, was terrible. This defense held for a while, but they could not stop Matthew Stafford and an running game with some decent receivers. I don't know. It's just something about the Cardinals that I was hoping to see out of them. I did not see. If you're watching, please submit your questions through the chat box, not the comments box. I don't see those if you are putting those in. I only see those through the chat box. And Joe, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the bad quarterback play, and I agree with that. But, what stands out with me from this week is the inspired performances from the teams that just didn't show up last year. I mean, we had the Browns taking the Steelers down to the wire. A gritty performance from Deshaun Kaiser, I will say. He wasn't the most impressive, but he hung in there. He got a few touchdowns. I mean, we have the Jaguars who, yeah, you can make the Tom Savage argument and Deshaun Watson the first game jitters, but I mean, the Jaguars defense really came out of nowhere. The secondary played impressive. I think they had 2 defensive touchdowns, or maybe just 1. I can't remember.
Calais Campbell had 4 sacks.
Yeah, no, they had 9 sacks. I think that was probably like more than they had. It was like the first time they won a
record,
since 2011. I was just doing some research. I was impressed by that. We had the Rams. I mean, again, you got Scott Tolzien, so
oh god,
not much to say. But I mean, an inspired performance from that team. I mean, I was impressed by like some teams coming back. They look like they're ready to go this year. I mean, we saw some really just not good things from the Browns and Jaguars last year, but I'm excited to see if, I mean, maybe it's just a 1-game fluke with the Jags, but I don't know. Maybe they can compete for a wild card or something. I'm interested to see about that.
You know, one of the things the Jaguars have not done is win in the division. Not that they've won at all lately, but they definitely can't win in the division. And to see them come into Houston, and Houston expects to play very inspired, playing in front of their home crowd after Hurricane Harvey, nothing, absolutely nothing. And the thing that I say about the Texans is their defense is pretty darn good. Their offense has pieces. They have DeAndre Hopkins. They have Braxton Miller. They had Will Fuller. He'll be back eventually this season. Lamar Miller is a capable running back. Joe, you can probably speak to this. Deontay Foreman was a pretty dynamic college back while at Texas.
Did he get much playing time this past weekend? I didn't really see.
He got a few carries. But the offensive line, barring no quarterback, we've seen with Indy, with the Giants, with Seattle, and it's been said, any Seattle fan, anyone on the internet, the Seattle offensive line is a bunch of turnstiles, as is the Giants offensive line. But giving up like 9 sacks, that would probably put you there too, and that's what Houston did. But give credit to the Jaguars, especially when it looked, I think after week 2 of the preseason, when Bortles' job was actually up for the taking, and he did win it back, although I don't know how many people thought he would really earned it back. This team came in. Doug Marrone had him playing. Leonard Fournette got his first NFL touchdown in his first game. As you know, we all know, he said at the beginning of the preseason, he said, "Oh, this is easy. This is easier than the SEC." So we'll see if that holds up. Texans have a very good defense, but the AFC South is it's always a mess. But this is an interesting mess because the Colts, they suck. They really suck. Like, if people really didn't appreciate Andrew Luck before, they will have appreciated him after yesterday, and they will appreciate him every week until he comes back. And that may not be for like anywhere 4 to 8 weeks, and that could even be longer. Scott Tolzien sucks. He is terrible. Since when did people think that trotting Scott Tolzien onto the field behind another turnstile of an offensive line was a good idea? And the defense was already really bad from the last couple of years. Sure, they got Jonathan Hankins, the new general manager, Chris Ballard. He's trying to build things up, but they're too thin. No Vontae Davis starting yesterday either. And yes, as bad as the Colts were, and I do have a bone to pick with Chuck Pagano. I like Chuck Pagano, but he did not challenge what should have been clearly a touchdown in the first quarter by running back's last name is Mack. I forget his first name. Clearly, he hit the pylon. I don't know how the ref didn't call it a touchdown, but Chuck Pagano did not even challenge it. They only got a field goal out of the drive because how are you going to expect Scott Tolzien to get the ball in from the 2? And then Adam Vinatieri also missed an extra point and a field goal. If Adam Vinatieri is missing the uprights, clearly your team is not doing something well.
Well, to be fair, is there even like a replay board at the Coliseum?
You know, it's a good point. They are playing in LA, you know, one in a 30,000 seat stadium, one in a 100,000 seat stadium that doesn't get 15,000 people. It's a good point, and also goes to show maybe LA isn't the place for one, necessarily 2 teams. But I would think that the people upstairs, at least he could have thought to take a little time, call a timeout. I understand if you lose the challenge, then you miss a timeout. But I was surprised, and everyone was surprised involved in the broadcast, that he didn't even think to challenge. But on the other side, the LA Rams, it was a pretty favorable, opening matchup for them, having struggled so much last year. I like the coaching. Sean McVay did a lot with Kirk Cousins, and we saw that how he struggled yesterday. A lot of it had to do with Sean McVay. And Wade Phillips can coordinate a defense. They have pieces, and Wade Phillips can do a lot with the defense. And sure, they played a really bad team in the Colts, but they put up, 46? When's the last time the Rams, whether they were in LA or St. Louis, put up 46? Was that like when Kurt Warner was around? I don't think they've had an offense since Kurt Warner. So that was exciting to see from the Rams. And the defense as well. I started their defense in fantasy because everyone cares about my fantasy team. So that was a wonderful
quietly good group of wide receivers too, I'd say, from the Rams.
Yes.
Very impressive and dangerous too. I mean, you got what's Cooper in the slot?
Cooper Kupp.
And then Sammy Watkins and Tavon Austin. I mean, both huge threats. So that's something to definitely watch out for.
And the man, Todd Gurley, who killed everybody's fantasy hopes last year and whose fantasy owners from last year will not take a chance on him this year. He scored a touchdown yesterday. He was not bad. I have him, again, on my fantasy team. But don't be surprised. We learned this, at least I did, out in L.A. They're going to use him more in the pass game. And frankly, I think he's due for a bounce-back year. He was okay yesterday. It was better than the -3 yards he registered against the Niners week 1 of last year. So that is already a step in the positive direction. And this LA team is going to be one to watch. It's a cautious optimism, but it's an optimism nonetheless in LA. All right. What else do we have? Spentano, what do you think about that Redskins-Eagles matchup?
Oh, the Redskins got so screwed over. That was clearly an incomplete pass. And they reviewed it, and then they still said it was my opinion, Kirk Cousins still would have thrown the game and threw an interception later, but they still should have had a chance. Now that it just didn't really seem like the pieces even fit that well. Terrell Pryor, I think he had one big catch. Crowder struggled. Jordan Reed struggled.
Crowder muffed a punt, didn't he?
Yeah, Crowder muffed a punt. It was a really ugly game for Washington. And, I mean, Philly didn't look that great either. They had 2 plays early, and then they had 2 Carson Wentz key turnovers, and I think one of them was a pick 6.
Yeah, but he did show you why they drafted him, though. He made some great plays and some great throws, and his mobility as well is very key with Wentz. But this is the Washington team that we all know and love. They have talent. They just can't put it together. It just doesn't fit. And the reason it did fit for Kirk Cousins the last couple of years was one, Sean McVay. Sean McVay is not there any longer. I was not especially high on Kirk Cousins coming into the season, and it's a little bit of what I thought was coming for him. Not totally surprised. Again, it is week 1 for everybody, so the rust is there, clearly, especially with Wentz as well, all around the league, whether it's with the quarterbacks who didn't play much in the preseason. I thought the offensive lines would play a little better, but it was a week dominated by defense. And one of those defenses was the Dallas Cowboys. And this can go on for a long tangent here. I'll try to keep it short. And I'll preface it by saying that I don't like to go on Twitter rants. I'll tweet every once in a while. But during Giant games, it's just so hard not to go on a Twitter rant. You look at who is on the sidelines, and it doesn't even look like they know what's going on. Ben McAdoo has his I'm not even going to be able to use the words I want to use to describe his haircut or his facial expressions that go on during the game. The defense stood up. The defense played its heart out. The defense was on the field for 20 out of the first 25 minutes of this game, and if not for a 10-minute drive that only resulted in a field goal at the beginning of the third quarter, the time of possession numbers would have actually been more representative of what happened during the game. But frankly, this offense,
it's like they almost forgot about Brandon Marshall.
They did.
He's one of the most talented receivers, and I remember, I think it was second quarter, Eli Manning missed him by about 10 feet on an easy slant route. There was an easy completion. It was going to be like a 30-yard completion, and Eli Manning just completely missed him. And it was like, that was one of his only targets of the game. And they just kind of shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, that's not a bad description of it. And okay, we get it. They have no line. They have no left tackle. They have no left right.
Their inside's all right.
They have
no tackles.
To the inside, Pugh and Richburg are fine. Jerry is, a semi-automatic holding machine.
Jerry.
That's about it. The other two are just god-awful. But the one thing about Eli Manning is if he doesn't get in any kind of rhythm early, he is not getting a rhythm. Eli has the ability to lose a rhythm, but he cannot gain a rhythm. So when he goes, I don't know, 3 and out on the first 3 drives and then picks up his first down on the 4th drive, and then they consequently punt the ball away the next time, and I still maintain the fact that Brad Wing should be the highest paid player, save Odell Beckham, on the Giants offense or special teams. There is just nothing about this offense that excites you. Where's the creativity? They were in the 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back set 90% of the time last year. Nothing seems to have changed. And Eli Manning is same kind of that look the entire game. And even when they're starting to put a drive together, and after he hits Evan Ingram for a 30-yard pass down the left sideline, I'm thinking, okay, there's a chance for a little bit of rhythm. Time is against them. They're down by 13. Now, comes back, next play, throws a pick. There it is. Game, good night.
Anthony Brown is criminally underrated.
Well, yes, criminally in the sense that the Dallas defense is made up of convicts. But
wow.
You can't deny that. You cannot deny that.
I can deny that.
And they got rid of Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy's not on the team. Randy Gregory, I don't know if I don't think he's still on the team. I'm not sure.
Suspended for a while.
He's suspended, but I don't know if they're keeping him. I don't know why they would.
In any case, the Giants couldn't run the ball. The Giants couldn't throw the ball. The Giants could defend the ball. It'll be a very interesting matchup. They need Odell Beckham back in a huge way. I think being at home will help a little bit, but they're playing a very tough Lions team. They beat the Lions handily by 11 last year in a very defensive battle, and I think week 15 or 16. I think it was week 15. And that was just classic Giants football last year. Limited offense, dominant defense. It was, it'll be very interesting week 2. They really can't avoid an 0-2 start. That would be very bad. And you would have to expect, no, you can't expect the Cowboys. They're going to go in and beat the Cowboys. At least come out with a 1-1 over the first 2 games. So that's it for the Giants. I am done wasting my time on them for the rest of the week until I get my hopes back up.
Ben McAdoo had an interesting quote before the game. Not before the game. It was during the week sometime where he was asked about if Zeke was going to play, if it was going to change his game plan. And he said no, because it doesn't matter. All runners run the same when there's nowhere to run, which would explain their offense, because they just hand the ball to Paul Perkins and have him run 2 yards. That was their first 3 possessions. Have Paul Perkins run twice, it be a 3rd and 5, and then them not complete it.
It always seems like when someone else fails, Orleans Darkwa steps up for 2 series.
Like twice last game.
He will step up for 2 series, and you're like, oh yes, we'll give the ball to him the rest of the game, and then he gets consequently shut down. It's a recurring cycle with Darkwa. So there is no answer except maybe give Shane Vereen the ball a little more. Use him out in the flat screen. Give him a couple more screen passes, except for the fact that none of the receivers know how to block. None of the offensive linemen know how to get out in front of him and block. It's blocking. It's the issue. So,
Rhett Ellison actually played well. I think he was the one player in the Giants offense that played well. Blocking-wise.
Yeah, blocking-wise, I thought he was good.
I don't know what he did in the passing game, but.
Yeah. Any other points we have from the NFL before we move on? There's a lot to get to, but we can't cover everything tonight. No? All right. We are moving on. And we are in September now, mid-September, the MLB wildcard race. Everything about the MLB is heating up at this moment. I think, Joe, am I still correct that there are 5 or 6 teams within 4 or 5 games of the second AL wildcard spot?
Yeah, I think it might be 6. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. The Yankees have the first spot.
Hopefully NL one's ramping up too, because the Diamondbacks, the Rockies have been struggling, and the Cardinals and Brewers are right there now too. So
Brewers are on a roll.
Yeah, Brewers swept the Cubs this weekend.
They beat them 14-2 last night or something like that.
And they actually had the Brewers Twitter had a really strong troll game. The Cubs posted a picture of the final score at Wrigley and said, hopefully you had a better Saturday than we did. And I think the Brewers quoted the tweet and with the caption, oh yes, thank you for asking. We did have a great Saturday. So that was very good by the Brewers media department. So enjoyed that. But yeah, there's a ton going on. Yeah, Joe, the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from the Rangers, although either team's deficiencies were pretty much exposed.
It
Whether
was a
it's
bad series. Just not. I mean, it was horrible pitching on both sides. It was really not great to watch, except for Saturday. Saturday was a pitcher's duel, but
yeah, hopefully. I mean, Aaron Judge seems to be slowly getting back on track. Had 2 homers yesterday. He and El Gary, so that's some positive signs for the Yankees fans out there. The Twins, I think, are in the second wildcard spot right now. They've come on a surge, of late last few weeks to get to that spot. I think if we were in early to mid-August, people thought they were going to fall off the rails, but they've managed to right the ship. And Byron Buxton has been everything and more for them. So good things from the Twins. Who else is right there?
I think the
Rays,
you're talking about
Royals,
AL. Rangers are only 2.5.
Angels. The Angels are in second right now. The Orioles are right there.
Seattle.
It's like the Twins are like in the second right now. Then the Angels are a game behind, and the Rangers, Orioles, Rays, Royals, and Mariners are all like 3 games behind the Twins.
Yeah,
Didn't the Royals not score a run for like 15 innings or something?
I think the Indians shut them out for, I think that was the beginning of their current 18-game win streak.
Yes.
They shut them out, swept them 3 consecutive games, and that has been the start of a magical 18-game win streak for the Indians. And they, I would have to think, in the AL are the team to beat. There's something about the
2 more and they get a movie.
Oh. Okay.
That's how it works. Even if they lose in the first round, they get a movie.
You mean like because of Moneyball?
Yes.
Well, I think it's just a lot to think about with Cleveland. They have the pitching is there. Trevor Bauer.
Bauer's really come on this year.
And Andrew Miller's not even healthy right now. I mean, when he comes back, you can't even imagine what that staff's going to look like.
I saw Corey Kluber pitch against the Yankees. He was dominant, and the most thing I'm impressed about with Kluber is that he doesn't throw 96 plus like most of the other successful, at least the young arms out there. Kluber maybe tops his fastball at 94, but the guy has movement and the guy can pitch. And
he's really surpassed Chris Sale for the Cy Young with Chris Sale's poor last few outings. I mean, I think I saw in the last month or so, he has like a close to a 5 ERA. It's really
those numbers bring joy to my ears. Hearing that Chris Sale is struggling, the Yankees finally beat Chris Sale, and I think they had quite a day off of him when they did. But so the Indians have won 18 straight. Am I correct that the Dodgers have now lost 10 straight?
Yeah, and like 13 of the last 14.
So now the Dodgers are coming back down to earth. Everybody's like, oh, yes, no, this is the year. This is the year. The Dodgers aren't going to choke in the playoffs. Well, what if I told you that they would choke in the regular season, limp into the playoffs, and then consequently get bounced? That's a possibility. Why are they struggling so much? Anyone who can answer.
I'm not sure. I think they definitely are struggling. I think their success was almost so surreal that like the fact that they just like came down to earth and become like a normal baseball team like made it. Or I don't know. Maybe it's Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish was sucking for the Rangers. Maybe it's a Yu Darvish thing. But I mean, like the way they were playing in, I guess it was June, July, and part of August. They just couldn't lose a game. And I think they finally came back down to earth. I mean, Corey Seager and Justin Turner, they were Cody Bellinger. I mean, Cody Bellinger's good, but he was hitting a home run like every at bat. I think they kind of just like got out of their little heat phase. But I mean, they're still, I think, the most dangerous team in the NL.
Now, obviously, Joe, Matt, and I have a friend named John who is a Nationals fan, but continues to say that the Nationals aren't that good. Do we agree with that statement? I am going to say no. They seem like a pretty darn good baseball team. What is their strength?
They are a darn good baseball. The starting pitching is their strength, and I think the Nationals, what's interesting about them is you go from having Gio Gonzalez, Steven Strasburg, and Scherzer, probably 3, besides the Dodgers, 3 of the best starters in the league, and then all of a sudden you drop off to a bullpen, which is, I don't know if it's the worst in baseball, but it's up there among blown saves. So I think that's what prompts our friend to say they suck. But I mean, and that's why I'm so hesitant about the Nationals, because they can win games, but just that the threat of that bullpen not being able to close out, I think that's what gives the Dodgers the edge when you think about most dangerous teams in the NL.
And yeah, the bullpen really just cripples teams come playoffs. I mean, we saw it with the Tigers for 3-4 straight years back when they had the Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer and David Price. That was the best staff in baseball, but their bullpen just couldn't hang on, and they never won a World Series with that staff.
Yeah, and the bullpen has been the Achilles heel. Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, for the Rangers as well.
Oh,
That's
God.
been their really Achilles heel. And for as much accolades that the Yankee bullpen is given, they suck too. Like, they have guys who are talented, who can throw very hard. They have David Robertson. They have Dellin Betances. They have Aroldis Chapman, who, after being given a couple days off, seems to be refreshed for at least one save. They've blown, I believe they're going on like 24 saves now. So everyone's like, oh, yes, the Yankees are going to be able to thrive if they make the playoffs, because they can send the starter out for 6 innings and then 7, 8, 9, boom, 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 except that they can't. And the starting pitching has actually been the strength of this team. And there are days where this team will not hit, and they could be up or down a run, and they need some kind of a hold or a save from the bullpen, and they're getting nothing from Betances, Chapman, or Robertson. Or even Tommy Canley has been terrible as well. And honestly, throwing hard isn't everything. We saw that weeks ago when Rafael Devers turned around on a 103-mile-an-hour Aroldis Chapman fastball to knock it left center Oppo out of the park, and that eventually was all she wrote for that game, and the Red Sox won. But this Yankee bullpen is not what people make it out to be. It sucks too. It seems like the team that's going to have the best bullpen in the playoffs is going to win. And right now it's showing. The Yankees could easily be, I think they're 4.5 games behind the Red Sox now for first in the AL East. They could easily be tied or ahead of the Red Sox in the East and not be, sweating it out as they currently are in the first wild card spot. What other teams intrigue? How are the Cubs doing right now?
Well, they just got swept by the Brewers, so I mean, I haven't really heard much about the Cubs. So
they've been very quiet.
Yeah.
And this NL wildcard race, it hasn't gotten as much attention as the AL wildcard race, but it seems like there are still a bunch of teams still, mushed around there, ready to pounce on anyone's mistake.
Mm-hmm. The Cardinals and Brewers are right there. They're like 3 games behind the Diamondbacks. I don't see any of those teams jumping the Cubs or the Diamondbacks, just because, I mean, the Diamondbacks at the beginning of the year were unstoppable, and I haven't seen a level of consistency from the Cardinals pitching or the Brewers pitching that makes me think. I mean, yeah, the Brewers played well this weekend against the Cubs, but I just don't see them. I mean, 3 games back with less than a month left to play, I don't see them having enough to really jump out in front and make the playoffs.
Yeah, at this point, it's a 3-team race for that second wild card spot, unless Colorado continues to fall, or unless Arizona falls and it manages to become a 4-team race for 2 spots. It looks like a 3-for-1 currently. Any other points on the MLB, or we'll move on to our final segment and touch on some college football? Nope, that's it. All right. Well, Matt, here's your time to run wild. 2 straight weeks of some marquee matchups in college football. Alabama rolled week 1. Alabama rolled against who'd they play? Some town state.
Stanford? I don't remember.
Fresno State.
Fresno State. Okay, an okay program, but it still has state on the end of it, and it's not, like an actual state. So clearly, Alabama was going to roll. What'd you say?
So did Paul George.
Yes, Derek Carr. Paul George, Fresno State produced some pretty good athletes, but
David
nevertheless,
Carr also go there.
I have no idea. All I know is David Carr was
a very underwhelming David Carr.
They could be.
I'm searching.
They could be. Nevertheless, 2 marquee matchups at least this week: the Auburn Clemson, and really the more entertaining one, even though it wasn't as close in the scoreline, was Oklahoma and Ohio State. So, Matt, I want to hear your thoughts on those two matchups and where we're left in the AP poll right now.
Well, I'll start with Auburn and Clemson. It was pretty obvious that Auburn has the same problems that they've had for the last year, ever since Cam Newton went to the NFL. They can't find a quarterback that can consistently produce, and that's really just holding them back. And not to mention, Clemson's defensive line was unreal. I think they had up near like eight or nine sacks in that game, and it was just Clemson's defense dominating them. And Kelly Bryant, Clemson's quarterback, has been very impressive. He's replaced Deshaun Watson. He's basically like a mirror image of Deshaun Watson. And then on the Oklahoma-Ohio State game, I really think that Baker Mayfield has solidified himself as the Heisman frontrunner so far in the season. And I know Lamar Jackson has had multiple, 600-yard games, but those were against UNC this past week, and before that, Purdue.
Purdue,
they've been surprisingly okay, a fun offense to watch. But yeah, Jeff Brom is surprised with Purdue. But yeah,
Go ahead.
I think that Ohio State definitely deserved to drop to number 9 as in terms of the AP poll. I think it's the last 3 are in the top 10 are Michigan, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. And it's really I'm surprised that they dropped Ohio State below Michigan, because Michigan really had a poor performance against a really bad Cincinnati team. So that was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, Ohio State encountered the same problem that people thought would hinder them if they were going to be hindered this season as they did last season. JT Barrett can't pass the ball, and they brought in Kevin Wilson as the offensive coordinator from Indiana. They eventually took care of Indiana, and they pulled away late, but you could see there were the seeds of doubt that were planted there in the first half plus, and Oklahoma's defense isn't supposed to be that good. They're a Big 12 team. The Big 12 doesn't know how to play defense. So the fact that they go in to Columbus and give up only 16 points, and they really – I didn't watch the entire game, but it seemed like at a certain point they were on cruise control and it wasn't that close. Urban Meyer's got to be searching for answers at this point. Now, I don't know who would challenge JT Barrett, but he's not the answer right now. But, Matt, let me ask you this question about Clemson. People had not really given them the respect they might deserve because they lost so much, even as defending champions. But from what you've seen from this team now, going against who they play week? No, they played no one competitive week 1, but having now played a very quality opponent week 2, would you say this is a team that can contend for a national title?
I don't know that they're at the point where they can contend for a national title. I think next week against Louisville will be a very we'll see how they're doing, because Lamar Jackson is really the first offensive threat that Clemson's defense will face this season. And I really think that until Clemson plays, Auburn has an okay defense, but they're not up there with the national title contending teams like Alabama, or I guess we're considering Oklahoma's defense good now. But yeah, I don't think Clemson's there yet. They've got to prove next week against Louisville that they're there, and then if they wipe the floor with Louisville, then they'll really be in national title contention.
And it's interesting because that's going to be a matchup where you get a defending national champion that has gotten little attention, and a defending Heisman winner that has gotten little attention, yet they have gone about their business very successfully. Lamar Jackson has put up godly numbers, and Clemson has made a statement now. So it's interesting to see where we go from here. It's not very impressed with either Wisconsin nor Michigan. I think that they were given some softballs and didn't really hit them out of the park. Obviously, scoreline wasn't that close, but let me tell you, Michigan was in a dogfight there, I think, towards the end of the third quarter, and it took them, I think, I didn't watch the end, but Joe, you can talk a little bit about that Michigan game.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I honestly think it was a fluke because you look at it, the way Michigan just dominated Florida. I think the real question with Michigan is what they're going to do at quarterback because Wilton Speight has looked brutal in 2 games. I mean, he's had moments of life where he's been able to connect on the deep ball, but I mean, the fact that Michigan was able to so handily beat Florida despite throwing 2 pick sixes, I mean, I think the thing with Michigan is that their defense is going to keep them in any game they play, and I think that's the same thing with Wisconsin too. Is why I think that's just what makes them such dangerous teams. Is that you rarely, if ever, just see a team pound the ball against Michigan's front 4 or anything, which is I think is just so valuable, especially in a college football game that's evolving where we're seeing no defense. I think it's to see Michigan and Wisconsin like just shut teams down is really, I mean, I think it's valuable. I think it will carry them far in the season.
I can't wait to see the Saquon Barkley and Michigan's defensive line matchup.
Yeah,
it's gonna be
that should be good.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And looking at Michigan's schedule now, they don't really face a test. They have Michigan State on October 7th. That's a rivalry game, and clearly they'll play them tough. They did last year, did Michigan State, when Michigan was heavily favored. I suspect they'll do the same. Then they have Indiana. They should roll. And then they go to Penn State, and that Penn State game is really going to be their first big test after. Obviously, Florida was a good test for them, but this will be, on a true road game in a tough environment, a Big Ten rivalry matchup. But after that, Rutgers, Minnesota, Maryland, and then this Saturday, November 18th, when they go to Wisconsin, that is going to be one entertaining matchup, assuming that both teams are in position to play, at that time for a Big Ten championship and possibly a road into the college football playoff, because these teams, as we just alluded to, are somewhat mirror images of each other. They are teams with stout defenses. They're going to run the ball first, and the passing game just is not the strength. And I think it'll be a fantastic game. Michigan won it 14-7 at their house last year, and now it could be Wisconsin's turn to return the favor. That'll be very interesting. Other points from college football. We're 2 weeks in. There's definitely plenty of attention. Unfortunately for Florida State, not that I'm a fan of the team or the program or anything about them at all, but they lost a huge loss of DeAndre Francois. You can probably kiss any big things they had coming for them goodbye. So that's unfortunate. You never want to see a team lose their season's hopes because of a really gruesome injury, but it's just the way it is sometimes. The Stanford-USC matchup, USC looked terrible against Western Michigan, let's be honest, and they handled a Stanford team that looked very dangerous. So I think USC fans can now take a sigh of relief and really focus that there is something for them ahead. Anything else?
You never know. Those Longhorns could spoil the party this upcoming weekend.
Well, after a dud against Maryland, they came back and they really thrashed San Jose State. Joe, I know
that means.
Whatever that means. That could mean just about as much as them thrashing you or me. So, really.
Yeah. Speaking of Maryland beating Texas, how about the Big Ten has been very impressive. Like, I think Maryland beat Texas. Purdue gave Louisville a scare. Of all people, Rutgers gave Washington a scare.
Rutgers hung in there.
Against
and then they lose to Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, Northwestern got screwed against Duke. They really, I thought they would have a decent chance if there was going to be a team to challenge Wisconsin, and if Wisconsin slipped up there to possibly grab the Big Ten West. Yeah, no, it's not happening. Northwestern is not good. They're really not. No part of them looks promising at all, except for maybe a kicker, but I don't even know much about the kicker. So Pat Fitzgerald is going to have to find something there and salvage a bowl for them, but Big Ten West looks out of reach right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Ten has been, except for Ohio State's dud against Oklahoma, they've been pretty good. UCLA improves to 2-0. Yeah, they beat Hawaii. Ho hum. Beat the Rainbow Warriors. Always nice to say you can beat the Rainbow Warriors, but That's about as much as you can take away from that win. Josh Rosen, impressive again, as he should be.
The boy,
Jets
Josh Rosen.
quarterback.
Josh Rosen, the pride, the love and pride. Anything else from college football, or we're going to wrap it up for tonight?
Well, there's
Final.
three really good prospects, right, for quarterback.
Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, and Josh Rosen.
Yeah. So, what teams are probably gonna try to trade up in the NFL draft next year to get them?
Well, I
Okay.
think the Jets have begun to position themselves well based
Yeah,
on
Jets for
all
sure.
just happenings with the Jets. They've positioned themselves well for whoever they want at the top. Who else is going to be looking for a quarterback? There are any number of teams who haven't addressed it to the extent that they've wanted thus far.
Maybe Chargers, Saints. They still need replacements.
They do.
I'm
I
just
don't-
thinking of teams that would possibly trade up, like we saw with Wentz and Goff.
or just teams that might already suck and be in
Yeah.
the line for a quarterback. I'm trying to think here.
Niners.
The
For
Niners,
sure.
I mean, they have C.J. Beathard and Brian Hoyer, but none of them is really going to be answered right now. In the East, NFC East is
NFC East. I think
Fine.
Eli's getting old, but he'll be fine for it.
they have Davis Webb. They've drafted Davis Webb to take a redshirt year or two, and then eventually, we'll see. But their Giants are not looking for a quarterback at this point. The Dolphins. What about the Dolphins? I mean, that's it. We don't know what the deal is with Ryan Tannehill. I believe he's a free agent after this. What's Jay Cutler going to do? I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill fan. Are they in line for a quarterback with a mentor like Adam Gase there? The Bills could definitely.
Yeah, I don't know with the Bills because I feel like they'd have to completely change up their entire offense if they were to get another quarterback that isn't Tyrod Taylor.
But at the same time, they didn't want Tyrod Taylor there in the first place. Like, they don't really want him there.
They got to get out of 8-8 land, which they've been in for 17 years. So
Yeah, lots.
I think the Browns with Kaiser are fine. I think they're obviously it's a little too early to judge, but I think that he's off to a right track compared to some other Browns quarterbacks we've seen, like Cody Kessler.
Brian Hoyer started a year 7-4, and they ended the year 7-9. We'll see how Deshaun holds up in his first year, because he could take a lot of hits and a lot of hits to his confidence as well. So things to keep in mind.
Also, do the Broncos think they have the answer?
Good point.
In
The Broncos could be a team that trades up,
definitely.
but we'll see
And
what they got
Jags
tonight.
Bortles is just unfixable.
Hey, the Jaguars and Rams are headed for Super Bowl 52 at the moment. They are locked, loaded, ready to go.
It's going to be a 3-3 final.
Exactly. It's going to be the Jags defense against the Rams defense. Who can come up with more pick sixes? So that'll pretty much be the story of Super Bowl 52 come early February. Well, that will do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. For Joe, Matt, and Spencer, I'm Eli, and we will see you next week.